Okay, what is today? September the 8th, 2007.
Hey.
I'm sorry, I missed a year. Uh, the We're at the office of Charles W. McDonald, who is my son, and his office is located at 2024 Austin Avenue, Waco, Texas. He is the person that will be interviewing me and asking me the questions today. He has been practicing law, criminal law in particular, since about 1979, and he is a specialist in criminal law with the state bar.
Thanks for the introduction, Dad. For starters, why don't you tell us, if you would, some just basic background information, personal history, and just information about, our family, you and our family.
I was born in Temple, Texas, in 1928, and most of my life has been spent in McLennan County. My principal office for practice law, when I practiced law, was here in Waco, Texas, and the last office that I had was on Waco Drive, 3306 West Waco Drive, here in Waco, Texas. I'm married to Catherine Fay, and since about 1960, she has been with me at many of the meetings of TCLA and various functions and what have you. She's a cancer survivor, and of course she's now not able to function that way, but anyway, I wanted to point that out. Going back to my early life, I was born to a family without money, and we had to tough it out, so to speak, and they were honorable people but short on cash. I went to work with Southwestern Bell Telephone Company in about 1949, and I worked my way through Baylor University while working for Southwestern Bell, and I did the same. I worked my way through Baylor University Law School while working full time at Southwestern Bell. I got my license in 1957, 58. When I graduated from Baylor in 1958, I started to go to work with a firm in Houston, Texas, and at the last minute changed my mind and went with the firm in Waco, Texas, in the Amical building known as Tyree, McLaughlin, Clark, and Gorin. They did not pay me any money, and there was a spare office outside of their main office that they gave me unfurnished, and I went to work in that office without any pay and solely on my own. The older partner, Willard McLaughlin, not the oldest, but one of the older partners, Willard McLaughlin, had been district attorney of this county in the 1930s. I can't remember the exact date, but he was an excellent prosecutor. And after getting out of the district attorney's office, sometime near 1940, he started to practice criminal law. Of course, back in those days, and when I started practicing, there were not too many people that practiced criminal law. Mr. McLaughlin was an excellent lawyer. He represented his clients to the fullest, and as I often said, losing was not an option. He stayed with his client till he got the most relief and the best relief possible. He was tough, fair, and good. He made a good living practicing family law. One of the things about Mr. McLaughlin, when I started, as I say, I had no salary, and any of the leftover, so to speak, of his cases that he didn't have the time to fool with, they were given to me, and they were my cases. Another person that stands out in my past history of criminal law is a lawyer named Leonard L. Gorin. He was in this firm, and I think this day and time he's about 93 years of age, but he graduated from Baylor cum laude, and he was an excellent lawyer and a very detailed person, and he could outwork anybody. In other words, when I went to work there, it was like 7 days a week, and if we had a trial or a case coming up, it was 7 days a week and nights. And that was the only way to work and try a case. I don't think that's customary now, but at any rate, when I started, that's the way it was. Leonard was an excellent student of the law, and such lawyers as Shuford Farmer and also Willard McLaughlin always tried to get Leonard, when they had a big case, to help them brief it and try to get points of error in the case itself. Such lawyers being Shuford Farmer, who I think's in our Hall of Fame now, but he was an outstanding criminal lawyer that everybody in this area knew and respected for his ability to handle criminal cases.
Dad, why did you, or can you tell us why you chose the practice or the field of criminal law? Why did you want to be a defense lawyer?
Well, in my early years, as I say, I started working with a telephone company, and before that I had various jobs in town, and I had no money, and on a few occasions, not many, thank God, I was arrested, and I was handled by the local police. And one experience comes to mind that I haven't forgotten. I was put in jail for a traffic ticket, where I remained in the Waco jail for about 7 days without benefit of counsel or telephone. And finally I got a friend that I knew that was a lawyer that finally came down and made my bond. And this was over some type of traffic violation. Another thing that made me want to be a criminal lawyer was the abuse that I personally witnessed, not only myself, but by seeing people that were abused, principally because they had no money or had no means, or they were not prominent members of society, and they got nothing as far as justice in the criminal justice system. Times, even when I first started practicing law, there would be a a person charged with a felony, and the judge would grab the first lawyer that passed by the door to come in and sit by his side while he was sentenced to go to the penitentiary. And that sounds bad, and it is bad, but that's the way it was back in the 50s and of course preceding the 50s. Other things that I witnessed personally after I began to practice law and previous was the abuse that people suffered that was charged with crime. I've seen people where their arms, both of them, were burned with cigarettes. I've been to jails in East Texas when I couldn't even get in to talk to a client that I was trying to represent. And I've been in jails at times when a jailer would have a pistol on me and tell me that, that I could go ahead and interview the client while he stood and watched what went on and what was said. At that time, also, there were judges, I'm not going to name any of them, but there were judges that would say, well, just, try to get along with them, it'll all work out. You could not even get any relief in the district courts. Again, that wasn't a regular thing, but it was a thing and a situation that did occur in my experiences several times.
You want to talk about, you were there at the outset of the founding of the organization, the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association. Can you tell us or share some of your experiences with us and give us the background of how the organization started?
I was called by, I believe, Frank Maloney, or perhaps Tony Freelo, in 1970, and I was told about the fact that they were trying to organize a criminal defense bar that would assist people that were practicing criminal law, that would help train people that wanted to begin to practice criminal law, become criminal lawyers, and try to help curb some of the bad legislation that was coming down against the person accused of crime. That it would be, I was also told that it would be an independent organization, that it would not be controlled by anybody, and that the lawyers themselves, that the association would be self-sustaining, on its own feet, without any type of government control, or not controlled by the state bar or anybody else. Period. After having that telephone conversation, I immediately told Frank, or whoever it was that called me at that time, to count me in as a member. That sounded like something that I wanted to be part of. The organization, I think, was founded in 1971. I don't know whether I said this or not, I was a charter member of that organization, and I went to the first meeting of that organization, I believe at the Ramada Inn in Dallas Love Field in 1971, seemed like in the fall, I can't remember the exact date. But anyway, when I went to this meeting, I was happy, I was thrilled. I can't express the feeling that I had. The reason being that there was a number of well-known lawyers that had dropped what they were doing and was present at that meeting, and were participating in that meeting, such as Warren Burnett, Frank Maloney, Tony Freelow, Phil Burleson of Dallas, Thornton of Galveston, Texas, and on and on. There were many people there at that meeting, the first meeting that we had, and it was a business meeting. It was not any social affair. We were looking into things to help the practitioner of criminal law. At this point in time, at this meeting, it was brought up by, I think, Ibn Calvin about an episode that I'd had in 1970 or 71. I cannot remember the date, but I had been fairly active in the representation of people accused of crime in this area, and there was a raid by the narcotics agents in 70 or 71. Anyway, the exact date I cannot tell you, but they rounded up about 30 individuals here. The two agents who were, the oldest was about 24 years old, and the abuse that they put upon these individuals, which we saw later, was unbelievable. Young children, I say young children, people 18, 19 years old, charged with possession of marijuana when they didn't even have any marijuana. I mean, planted on them, charged with it. But the night that they made their big raid and finished up their tour of Waco, so to speak, I dropped into a lounge out here in North Waco to talk to a client of mine that I wanted her to be in the office on this, I think it was Saturday night, and I wanted her to be in the office on Monday. Anyway, while there, and I'd only been in there for a brief period of time, there was a man about 6'2" that was staring at me, and the guy weighed over 200 pounds. Excellent health. Anyway, he was staring at me. He came over and he said, "You know who I am?" My reply was, "No, I do not know who you are." Well, anyway, I started out the door of this lounge, and when I stepped outside, the guy that had confronted me grabbed me by one side of one arm, and another narcotics agent grabbed me by the other side of my arm and carried me around to the back of this building, where they proceeded to slap me on both sides of my head and my ear, breaking or puncturing my eardrums, and then they went on and drugged me out to their car. I had, I think, 5 broken ribs, and I was put in between these two agents as they drove around town talking about killing me and what they could do with my body. And they punched me with pistols, and they pulled out my hair, and they beat on me in the car, and they finally stopped. And you know, at this point in time, I thought it was all over, but anyway, they finally said, "No, let's take him to the county jail." Now, why they stopped, I do not know, but anyway, we went to the county jail, and when we got there, instead of pulling through the back where the lights were, they pulled over to one side, hauled me into the jail entrance, and yelled narcotics agents, and carried me up to the 5th floor of the Waco County, Clinton County Jail, and told the officer there to charge me with assaulting a police officer. the officer did that. And the local judge came over and set a bond for me, and also got somebody to make it and got me to the hospital. At this particular time, it was 1970, 1971, the local police, the local county officials were for some reason frightened about the power that the narcotics agents had. They didn't have the power to run the jail, but a lot of the people thought that they did. And like the poor deputy that was on that night, he did exactly what the agent said. And anyway, I was released on bail. Continuing on with where I left off, and I'll get back to that, but there was a charge of me assaulting the police officers, and later on there was a federal charge against the two narcotics agents for violation of civil rights in the federal court. Now then, I'm back now to the first meeting. Emmett Colvin brought up, in fact, the night that I was beaten, he actually called the director of the Department of Public Safety, I think was the term then, of the agency, and told him personally about what had happened in Waco and what had happened to one of the lawyers there, and jumped on him rather harshly. At the meeting of the TCDLA in Dallas, Frank began to tell what had happened to me and wanted to try to solicit help from the agency itself to help me in the defense against these agents. I remember very well that Warren Burnett, who is deceased but is a well-known, top-notch criminal lawyer, he said, I don't think that the agency, I mean the organization, TCDLA, should get involved in representing either side because it's in the court system. He said that even though the agents beat me up, they were entitled to representation since they had been charged with a crime, and I was entitled to representation since I'd been accused of a crime. It was also at that time brought out that there was no problem with any of the individual lawyers of TCDLA offering their personal help, but not in the name of TCDLA. I was kind of surprised at first when I heard Warren say this, but as I thought of it, it didn't take me long what he was trying to say, and I agreed with him 100%. When the trial came up with me, I had all of the support from Tony Freelow, from Warren Burnett, Emmett Colvin, a number of other of the old members of TCLA were in Waco supporting me in my trial where I was accused of assaulting a police officer. The funny thing about this situation, if there is a funny thing, was that just before the trial, I received a call from a girl that I knew saying that she had been approached by one of the narcotics agents and wanted her to get me in one of the local motels here in Waco where they were going to get her with me and plant some marijuana on me. Anyway, she didn't go through with it. She came to my office, told me about it. We got a statement of it. When the trial started, without going into lots of details in the trial, but one of the agents on the stand, my lawyer at the time was Bill Dunham, who also was a charter member. And we had a blank tape that goes in your recorders. We had nothing on that tape, but I had one of my partners at the time give me that tape like it was something great, and I handed it to Bill, and he told this agent, said, now you try to get this man here to come into this motel, and where you're going to plant marijuana on him. And I'll never forget the expression, but anyway, he was sweating, and he couldn't speak, and he couldn't talk, and the next thing he said quietly was, yes. And anyway, he wasn't going to face that tape, which had nothing on it. Anyway, that kind of finished the trial against me. To finish the story, about the narcotics, the two agents were tried in the local federal court here for the Western District of Texas, Waco, and after about a 5-day trial, they brought down everybody from the Department of Public Safety, saying that the way they handled me was standard, and that they had a standard hand lock that they put on me, and they couldn't understand how my ribs got broken and whatever. But anyway, believe it or not, the two agents were found not guilty. So that's where that situation ended up. I guess that's about all that I want to say in respect to the narcotic situation. And
let me ask you, Dad. If I understand you, Emmett Colvin and the people that were with you when y'all founded the organization, they used that as a technique to gather funding for the organization, or showing what TCDLA, the organization, could do for fellow lawyers.
Well, in 1972 or 3, through Tony Freelo, I was appointed, named as a director of TCDLA. And there was a lawyer in San Antonio named David Evans, and another lawyer in Houston named George Duquette. And in my total experience with the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Association, I have never seen two people that could get membership better than those two. I've seen a lot of people try, but they had a knack for it. They were very forceful about it. They wouldn't take no, and they used me as an exhibit. I flew airplanes at the time, and we went all over the state, all over the state on membership drives, and they would drag me in and say, this is what happened to this guy, and you need to be a member. And and I, of course, would back them up. I'd say, yes, you must be. So, and then, like I say, they wouldn't take no. They got a check or something before they left, and of course, the record will show it's not the situation now with TCLA, but back in the 80s, it was borderline bankrupt from meeting to meeting, and without getting members and getting the dues, we would, sink and go under. We had a lot of fun. We did a lot of hard work. We went to every city in the state of Texas, and like I say, I had an airplane at the time that I flew, and it didn't matter whether it was Odessa or Beaumont, but we made the rounds and got the money. I remember distinctly in one of our meetings, 1974, maybe 75, we were so short on money that George Luquette proposed that each director contribute $100 to put in the pot to keep the organization going. That's how bad things were. And that, of course, continued on through my presidency. We got more members, and we were in better financial shape at the time that I was president than we had in the early years, but it was still nip and tuck even in 1981 and 1982.
How did y'all come about acquiring the original building or the original office for TCDLA?
In 1973, I was chairman of the board. I can't remember what the name of it was, to acquire a building or a location for TCDLA. I went down to Austin on several occasions with Bob Jones, Robert Jones, and we looked for buildings and looked around for buildings. We looked at lots, and the committee, all of us decided that we didn't need a lot. We needed to buy a building instead of trying to get a piece of land, especially in our financial condition. And we needed to try to get a building so we wouldn't have to worry about getting money to build a building. Finally, we found a building. Is that Guadalupe that the old building is on?
600 West 13th.
The old
brick building?
The first one.
That's it, isn't
I thought it was Guadalupe.
it? No.
Was it?
It's off of Guadalupe.
It's
off of
on
Guadalupe.
13th and Nueces, right down
Yeah,
the street.
13th and Nueces. That's what
Yeah.
we were talking about.
Nueces?
Okay. 13th and Nueces.
Anyway, I couldn't remember the address, but anyway, the first building that we had, and that was something that I'd been trying to do what I could. If I felt like if we could ever get a building of our own and get it paid for, that we would always have an association. We wouldn't have rent to pay, and if we didn't have 20 members, we'd still probably have an association. But anyway, Bob and I went and found this building, and we found one of the banks, I can't remember now which it is, that would give us some financing for that particular building. The association and the committee agreed to purchase that building. The only problem was that at that point in time, the bank didn't think that TCDLA was solvent enough to make the payments, and they required a signature on the note to guarantee payment for the building. I signed that note with personal liability to buy the first building that we had. I forgot now the cost, and I guess it's paid for because the bank has never foreclosed on it.
Sounds out.
I hope somebody's got the note. If you see it, tear it out.
You want to take?
Let's see, after 1500, it might have been page before,
Okay.
but we'll pick back up. Let's see.
Go right ahead.
One thing, then you ask me.
Go ahead.
One thing that I did forget to mention, and it's helped me, especially after I'm no longer a big part of TCLA, is and part of my family is my cat ice cream. I couldn't live without my cat, so I just wanted to kind of put her record. So that's all I have to say about ice cream.
Dad, we were talking about TCDLA during your time as president of the association. Do you remember any, just notable accomplishments or things that were special to you during your term?
Well, I mentioned the building. That was something that I'd had in mind for several years, and that was started or accomplished by the time I got out of office. It may have been the following year before it was completed, but anyway, that was done, and that was one of the biggest things that I wanted. In order to raise money, again, which was desperately needed, I came up during my tenure as president with the idea of getting a special category for people to join, and I came up with the fellows of TCDLA. It was a special membership with the payment of $1,500 to join. We got a number of the $1,500 pledges. I understand that is no longer the name. It's now, I think, sustaining members, if I'm correct, and the membership dues have gone up to $2,500. I don't know, is that correct or incorrect?
I'm not
The Sustaining Life members, I believe.
Sustaining Life is now $2,500.
I think.
Okay. But anyway, the start of that was on the $1,500 basis, and that was done during the time that I was president, and we did collect some needed money at that time.
Do you recall any, besides what you've already discussed before we get into personal experiences, but do you recall any things that just kind of kept during that time frame, like specializations or anything else that were of consequence to you at that time, or kept you, motivated as far as criminal law was concerned?
Well, I don't want to forget it. But 2 or 3 things. One thing is that myself and Bill Dunham flew to Dallas DFW airport at the time and met with Emmett Colvin and Phil Burleson and 2 or 3 other members of TCLA, and that was the kind of the birth of the Texas Criminal Defense Lawyers Educational Institute, and that was formed, and at some point in time then or thereafter I was president of that organization. The other thing that I was proud of and made me feel good and meant a lot to me was a picture of past presidents. I think that picture is at the home office now, but I got the idea that some of us were getting older, and I wanted to try to get a group picture of all of the past presidents as I was going out of the office, or I think it was the last meeting or whatever. But at that meeting, and we were at the Dolphins Hotel in Dallas, we did have a picture taking, and in the picture was Bill Burleson, Frank Maloney, Freelo, Gilson out of Lubbock, Weldon Holcomb, Emmett Colvin, George Luquette, Vincent Farini, and I'm not sure if Robert Jones was in there or not. I don't know about that. I think he was. Yes, he was. The only person that did not attend the picture taking at the Adolphus Hotel was David Evans, and he got to the airport in San Antonio and intended to come up, but due to some personal problems that he'd had with some individuals with TCDLA, as I understand it, he didn't come. He apologized to me for not being there, but that's the only person out of the original 10 presidents that was not in that picture. Again, that's something that made me feel good, because all of them came at my request to take that picture to Dallas, and it wasn't a very pleasant day. It seemed like it was in February or whatever, but anyway, they showed up. And it was an honor to me.
Let me just, this was the picture, this is the same picture I think that they now display at all the Rusty Duncan seminars every year.
That's what I understand. That's correct.
That's the picture that's on the tripod, and you go into the, it's on display there every year.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Every one of those men were good friends of mine, and they were all good lawyers and in their own way, and good people, and they had the heart of the association in mind 100%.
Would you like, Dad, would you want to at this point to share some, memorable cases or war stories, if you would, with?
Well, one thing that we talked about earlier during the intermission was, without sounding too braggadocious, I was a specialist in criminal law, civil trial law, family law, and personal injury law. I had 4 specializations by the state bar, and there was only 2 of us that ever had that many specializations, and both of us from Waco, myself and Bill Donald. The only 2 that ever had 4 specializations. How much money that brought to me, I cannot tell you.
Well, Dad, would you like I said, would you like to share some of your memorable cases, or again, war stories, or something that of a special nature?
Is that category 4 on the list?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Excuse me just a minute. Yeah, one other thing, if I may, that I want to bring up that may be of some benefit. But when I was elected president of the organization in 1981, all of the directors and all the past presidents were together. We all had a lot of fun together. We all kind of stuck together. We enjoyed each other's presence. And when I became president, I came up with the idea that all of these guys had been president before me, the 10 before me, or the 9 before me, and I decided that the best approach to running the organization and trying to do a good job in running the organization as president was to get with the past presidents. So every month I had a meeting with each of the past presidents. All of them, we'd attend the meeting and go over things that were going on with the association, and all of us put in what we thought about certain things and come up with something that would work. And I found that to be very beneficial for me as president, and I felt like I was doing the association more good by getting the input of the past 9 as well as my own experiences. So that was done during the entire term, 1981-1982. That's about all that I need to say on that.
During this period of time, is this where, before we get off TCDLA, is this where the strike force, or how did the strike force originate? Do you recall? TCDLA strike force, where the organization would come in and would help people?
I cannot tell you in detail. I knew about the strike force, and to some degree we were doing it from the beginning. We were helping people. We were helping especially young lawyers and whatever. But I'll leave the strike force to somebody that's more familiar with it than me.
Okay. Again, memorable cases?
Memorable cases, and again, it sounds like, you're being braggadocious, but for whatever, I will mention one case that I had in Waco. It was styled State of Texas versus Marge Lundy. Excuse me, how we doing on your time, all right?
Okay.
Okay. Marge Lundy and her husband had a little nightclub, beer joint on the Interstate 35, about 15 miles to the north of Waco. They had that little club and lounge there for many years. Marge weighed about 180 pounds. Her husband weighed less. But Marge, she not only ran the establishment, but she was a bouncer. And she was a good one. When anybody got out of line, she would tell them to quieten down, behave, and if they didn't, she'd grab them by the collar and throw them out the door. She's tough. And this particular club was a typical beer joint. It had beer, it had a wooden floor, it had a jukebox, it had various things on the bar to nibble on, and it had a little dance floor. Again, just a continuation of the wood floor with a little stand for a small band. At this point in time, speaking now of in the 60s, Marge was a personal friend of Willie Nelson. Willie Nelson lived in Abbott, Texas, which is about 4 miles from her club. And it's hard to believe, but back at that time, and I know this from personal experience, Willie in the 60s was not near as popular as he is in the 80s or now. And he had a hard time trying to find a place to play and sing, and Marge kind of took him in as a son. He could always find a place to play at Marge's night owl, and he did that, and he got to be very close to Marge Lundy. And so finally, back to the story. In 1980, Marge had a invalid sister and brother-in-law living in the house where she lived, which is about 200 yards from the lounge. She got off, closed the doors at 12 o'clock and went home, and when she got home, something occurred, but at any rate, the brother-in-law slapped the sister of Marge. The next thing that occurred, the guy was at the front door attempting to get out, and Marge shot him 5 times in the back. There was a chair where she's sitting next to her invalid sister. We didn't have too much from just the pure facts to work on, but we did have Marge herself was well known by members in West. She's known for a woman of her word. She was tough, but she kept her word, and people liked her. So first thing we did was to call Willie Nelson. He was on a concert in Connecticut, and we told him when the trial date was on, and we told him about when he would be expected to come down if he would. He canceled a what do you call it, the concert in Connecticut, and said that he would definitely be down for his friend Marge. We called him later and told him when to be there. He did exactly as he said, and he came down to testify for Marge Lundy. We also, at that time, we contacted about 25 other people, principally in the West area, that were scattered across the community: bankers, businessmen, cafe operators, people of good standing that knew her and were willing to testify for her. The trial started. The DA thought it was a cinch case. They called the coroner. He showed where the 5 bullets entered at about a 60-degree angle from the back and going out through the chest of the man, and that his position was at the front door. We tried from exhibits that we had to show that Marge was actually on the floor where this guy had perhaps struck her, and that she was on the floor in self-defense and shot, and to make sure she shot him 5 times. And that was about all that we had, except our witnesses, our character witnesses. We raised the defenses that were necessary, and we began to put on the character witnesses. We put on 4 or 5 of the locals, and we waited till about number 6 or number 7 before we put Willie Nelson on. And by this time, everybody in the courthouse was wanting to, Willie Nelson's going to testify, and the word spread, and the courthouse was full of people to see Willie Nelson. They wasn't there to see my client, but they were there to see Willie Nelson. And he testified, and I'm here today to say that I don't think I've ever had a witness that made a better witness than he did. He was 100% for his friend. He testified strongly in her behalf and about her character and how strong she was and how truthful she was and what have you. After that, we proceeded on to put on the other approximately 20 character witnesses. The judge is getting nervous and anxious, and the DA is trying to shut us down on the number of character witnesses, and we were arguing with the judge that these people that came down from West Texas, and they definitely wanted to testify, and of course, some of these people the judge well knew, and he well knew that they were people that would vote for him, and he was kind of in a jam, and so the character witnesses continued on until we got in excess of 20 of them on the witness stand. I can't tell you the exact number, but over 20 of them, and he finally just couldn't stand it anymore and shut us down. But by that time, we were in good standing and good shape, and you could feel it and you could see it with the jury. They were ready to acquit Marge, which it took them about 15 or 20 minutes to find her not guilty, self-defense. So that was a case that I will long remember for a number of reasons.
Let's hold for 1 second.
Okay. Yes, sir.
At this time, I want to add that if you practice criminal law and you take them as they walk through the door, you're going to lose some. And if you're not careful, you lose more than you win. So I've had my share, and I've had my share of losing, and some of them were very bitter, but that's part of it. I did the best I could at all times to represent my client to the best of my ability, and if it's anything that I can pass on to a younger lawyer, there's no substitute for hard work. I work many a 7-day week duty and nights, and you take it holidays and all when it came down to trying a case. I don't think there's any substitute for work, and I still say that today.
Is there any other cases you would like to share?
Well,
We've talked about the narcotics.
well, we talked about that. The only other case that got a lot of publicity, and it was an unusual case, was the case of Quinnish. I can't even remember at this time. This is back in the 60s. I can't even remember his first name. But anyway, Quinnish versus state of Texas versus Quinnish. And this was a man that was a security officer at the DFW Airport. He was married, and he had one child, I believe. He had a nice family. The father was a flyer for Braniff Airlines that flew 747s from Dallas to London. Good background, good people. But at any rate, Quinnish would leave work, get somebody to substitute, and there was a whorehouse down here on LaSalle Avenue, and that he'd drive from Dallas to this place of prostitution.
Massage parlor.
Well, they call it massage parlor if you'd like. At any rate, he would come down to the quote massage parlor, and on this particular occasion, this particular girl that was doing the massaging was naked, and it so happened that this guy had with him a hunting knife, about a 6 or 8 inch hunting knife, and the first thing that he did to her was come right down her back with that knife, and then he proceeded to continue to stab the poor girl. and blood was everywhere, and needless to say, she died probably instantly, but there was blood in every corner of that building. In fact, after this occasion, I don't think that building's ever been occupied since. They tried to clean it up, but the building's still there and unoccupied to this day. But he left, he got away, nobody saw him or anything, and he started back to Dallas, and he made the mistake of getting sleepy and taking a little nap in Itasca, which is about halfway, I guess, from Waco to Dallas. And while he was taking his nap, one of the local police drove by there and saw the car parked on the street, stopped and looked in and saw the blood, and anyway, called the DPS, and then the next thing, he's in jail. If he went on back home, probably the thing would never, say never, probably never been caught or tried. But anyway, he was incarcerated, and this time they found the girl, and he had I think the knife was still in his car, if I remember correctly. But he was charged with murder, and we proceeded to trial. But before that, this case had all kinds of publicity. All of the detective magazines at that time had some article about the girl, and it was really excellent material for the detective magazine, and it had a lot of publicity. But we didn't get the thing moved. I don't think we tried for a number of reasons, but we started trying that case, and finally. And I cannot tell you all of the weaknesses, but I finally pled this man to 20 years for this particular brutal crime, and the family and everybody was thrilled to death, and it was a good ending, although on the face of it sounds like a loser. But that was a very interesting case with very interesting people in the background, the mother and the father, and had no idea, knowledge of what was going on, and total shock to them. That's about all that I can say about that particular case. It was not appealed, and he got religion in Huntsville, and got out.
Well, anything you would like to say in closing that you'd like to pass on? You talked about something to say to the young lawyers. Anything further you would like to say about the organization, or?
Well, I want to say this: there's nothing that I've ever done in my life that I've had more satisfaction in doing and being a member of TCLA. I met people that I would never have met before. I've had good friends. Several of them are now deceased. That we had lots of good experiences together and lots of fun together, and we worked hard together, and we tried to do a good job. And it's an experience that I hope that that the members, especially those that are serving as officers or present, can have the same feelings that I have about that organization. I'll go to my grave thinking that that's probably the best thing that ever happened to me. And speaking of good lawyers, and in closing, I haven't mentioned his name, but there's a lawyer in Corpus Christi, Doug Tinker. I don't know how active Doug is at this point in time, and I haven't talked to him in quite a while, but back when I was very active, we were around each other quite a bit. And I'm bringing this up because if some young lawyer ever sees this, well, he'll kind of know what a real trial lawyer or a real criminal lawyer is made of. Doug and I are in a restaurant or bar in Houston, and we were talking about criminal cases and about various things. And it came up that he said he had just sent a client or an ex-client of his some money because he wrote him a letter and needed some money. And he further said that the client had filed a brief alleging insufficient counsel against Doug. And I like to drop my drink, or whatever, my food, whatever I was doing. And I said, how can you send a man that's filed a brief, alleging insufficient counsel, how can you still send him money? And he looked at me and he said, well, what would you do if you were in that man's circumstances? Should you do anything you could to get out? And I said, what can I say? So that's what a real criminal lawyer is made of. That's as good as I can get it. Anything else?
I think you covered it there.
Okay.